Hi, folks. With Tacitus today. Tacitus today, your pushback channel. Thank you for joining this audio, radio, no pictures. Listen to this presentation as you're driving along in your car or your truck live stream. In this essay, I'd like to talk about the outrageous abuse of work permits and work visas. So, bringing workers in from typically third world countries, basket case countries, bring them into the West supposedly as skilled labour, skilled migrants. Now, this is horribly abused, and I mean horribly abused, all over the Western world. What constitutes a skill and what constitutes a needed skill in the economy is in itself outrageously infected with ideology and political corruption of all sorts. But let me lay the scene for you here. Now, the argument is that business, so the business sector all across the Western world, is screaming for more workers and more skilled workers. And I mean screaming upon screaming. This is what we're told. We've even seen situations or interviews where Donald Trump, as a case in point, says that during his presidency, and by the way, given that he's now the most likely candidate for the office of president, that he's being accosted, as I understand it, on all sides from business people saying that they need mass immigration, they need skilled immigration, they need all these things. They're screaming, crying out for workers. There's just no workers anywhere. There's just none, not a single work out of a population of 300 odd million in the US. There's not a single person who wants to work or is available to work or can work or will do the work. Now, this is obviously beyond absurd and ridiculous, but this is the line that they're pitching to Trump or to any Western politician. Now, most Western politicians are owned and controlled by the globalists, so they're just doing what they're told anyway. Trump's a little bit unusual in that he's outside of that. He's an outsider and he's not completely controlled by them, although they can influence him in a number of ways, but he's not completely controlled by him. So they have to pitch an argument to him to, then get his support or not, as the case may be. So let's have a look at this. Is the thing. Businesses screaming for workers, they can't find any, and so on. Well, let's do some basic tests. Let's look at the biggest internet job board, and I've done this before. The biggest internet job board in Australia, the employment job board in Australia. So now the numbers are considerably less than they were pre-COVID. So there's a number of things you need to look at. So when you look at the headline, I'll just use round numbers here to indicate there's a couple of 100,000 jobs supposedly on there, but and again I'll use round numbers to illustrate the point here. But let's say there's 100 jobs on the job board. A very large proportion of those are duplicate, so it's one job that's listed 5 times or 10 times or 20 times, that sort of thing. So so if we actually factor that in, then the amount of jobs, it's not 100 jobs, it's something like 64 jobs that are really there, given you then take out duplications. There's also a number of jobs that are listed there because there's still a requirement. You need to list a job for 6 weeks, or theoretically you need to list a job for 6 weeks. But if you don't get any applicants, you can then go to the government and say, look, I've advertised it for 6 weeks, and you can falsely claim you've had no applicants, or you can structure the advert in such a way that you won't get any applicants. For example, you can say, we want somebody with 100 PhDs, and we know such person exists, and we're going to pay them 1 cent a century as a salary. No one's going to apply for that. So, but that isn't the criteria that you've created a false, ridiculous job that no one will apply for. You just say, well, no one applied for this for 6 weeks. I want to bring someone in from a third world basket case, failed state, shit, dirt poor country, because that's where all the genius hard workers are, in these third world basket case countries. Yeah, right. So there's a number of jobs there that are just stooge or zombie jobs that are being advertised. They're only there to provide the justification for bringing in or trying to bring in some third world peasant from somewhere. Then you get situations which are certainly widespread where, particularly in areas like construction and things like that, where because advertising is now so cheap because it's online, companies will routinely, and they do this as as casually as stopping and getting takeout food and so on. They'll put out an advert for it could be anything, could be labouring, could be whatever for a contract they're bidding for. Say a government contract to dig make a road, build a road or a bridge or something like that. They can put out adverts. So if we win this contract, we're going to need 100 labourers or 100 whatever excavator operators and that sort of thing. So we're going to need 100 there. So they'll advertise for 100 excavator operators. But there's maybe 5, 6, 7, 8 companies, businesses that are bidding for that, and they're all running the same advert because they're all going to need excavator operators. Then they've got a number of contacts in recruitment agencies who will also run adverts for the excavator. So you'll see there's adverts for thousands of excavator operators, but it's actually only one job. It's just the way that sort of situation multiplies, and these are all on the job boards. So once you start deleting off and taking off those type of duplications and the fake adverts, there's also a view that a number of organisations have where they've got a headcount approval to hire somebody, but they haven't got the budget approval, or they've got the budget approval but not the headcount approval. And again, because things are so cheap, advertising is so cheap, unlike in the newspapers where feature advert could cost you $5,000. So they'll go to their buddies in the recruitment industry sector and say, look, can you run some adverts? So we've got applicants, primed and ready to go, sort of at the pull of a trigger as soon as I get that headcount approval. So there's a lot of that, even though the job actually doesn't exist. And you'd think that there'd be legislation to stop. I mean, if the job doesn't exist, why the fuck are you advertising it, for goodness sakes? That seems like if a supermarket is advertising I don't know, cornflakes for sale, but it's not really for sale, it's just a bullshit thing to bring people in the door, then they would be fined for, and justifiably so. But when the recruitment or any organisation advertises a job that doesn't exist, then it's not a crime. So, but anyway, so you go through the list there, and straight away you're down to less than half of the jobs advertised are actually genuine. So when it says there are 200, for example, 200,000 odd jobs, there's actually less than 100,000 in reality for the whole of Australia. Now, once you've got that established, you need to look at the aging of the jobs, so you can separate them off by jobs that have been listed, by 7 days, 14 days, 21 days, 30, that sort of thing, 30 days. Then you look at the amount of jobs that are in the 30-day category, and there's hardly any. You're looking at a couple of thousand, and some of those are very sus, extremely sus, as to whether or not they even exist. And somehow they're ridiculously vague, suggesting they're not a real advert. I mean, I know people, senior execs that'll just say they'll run an advert for anything, any job, and just the expression is, I want to see what's out there. I mean, what the fuck does that mean? They want to see how many applicants there are, and they'll often use this as a way of setting or determining what the salary range should be. So if they get, so they put an advert and they get a gazillion applications, they say, wow, all these people, we can pay a low wage for this because there are so many people out there who want that job. If they alternatively put the advert out and they get very few takers, they'll have to pay a higher salary, but then they'll go screaming to the government saying, oh, there's no workers here. Nobody wants the job, which, of course, again, is nonsense. It also is an indication of not responding to market forces. If you put out an advert for a salary X and very few people apply, then increase the salary or increase the benefits or increase the, make the job more appealing in some way. But this is something they're not doing. The only solution is bring in brown and black peasants from the third world, which is, of course, again, quite ridiculous. Now, given that there is no shortage of there are no jobs that are going unfilled, so this idea that there's a shortage of workers is utterly absurd and can be rejected out of hand without even a debate. It's simply not true that there's a shortage of workers. There isn't. Now, there's given that benefits and worker benefits and pay are constantly under pressure, downward pressure too, I might add, then and there's a high turnover in some set, where the pay is absolutely crap, that the turnover is quite high because people will take the jobs only if they're desperate, and the minute they can find something better, they get out. So it's here in particular, and these are not skilled jobs either, it's here in particular that there's you could say there's pressure for more workers, but there actually is no pressure for more workers. There's no pressure on the companies to respond to market forces. If you can't hire or keep your staff, then you improve the conditions, but they don't want to have to deal with that. They want a supply of third world peasants, which obviates the need for them to respond to market forces and improve worker conditions or pay or both. Now, coming to the matter of skilled labour, this again is utter and complete nonsense, and we're absolutely barraged with propaganda and a whole series of absurdities there. The claim has been, and this claim's been around for 25 plus years, certainly in Australia, and I remember it even happening even earlier in the United States, was this: there's not necessarily a worker shortage, although they switch between the two depending on what argument they want to push, but claiming there's skills. Australia just doesn't have the skills. The economy cannot grow until we have the skills. Well, if there is a shortage of skills, why has our economy and our education industry been so poor at addressing this shortage? And if the shortage is something that comes up in 5 minutes, that could not have been conceivably planned for or foreseen, then that means it's going to disappear in 5 minutes as well. So why would we import a fuckload of people to be doing work that is only going to be a flavour of the month for a very short time? Now, there has never been a skills shortage, and if there was, it could easily have been made up with additional training and orientation type courses in Australia. This idea of bringing skilled labour in. Now, there's a if we look at the wider thing, Australia decides to train fewer doctors instead of training. Again, I'll use just round numbers here to simplify. Instead of training 100 doctors a year, we'll cut the training down to 50 doctors a year. Oh, we've short on doctors. We'll have to import them now. Oh, with nothing we can do. We just have to import them. And that's a self-inflicted, ridiculous wound there. Why cut back the number of doctors when you know you're going to need doctors? That is foreseeable. So why would you do something that ridiculous, then scream and cry that you have to go and get doctors from some third world shithole to come to Australia to replace this shortage of doctors that you willfully decided not to train here in Australia? I mean, it almost defies the imagination as to how ridiculous some of these things are. But on the matter of skills shortage, there has never been a skills shortage. You can artificially create one. So, we're going to have a rocket science industry tomorrow that employs 10,000 rocket scientists, but there aren't even 10,000 rocket scientists in the whole world. So by doing that, you've created an artificial, through political contrivance, you've created an artificial shortage that never existed. And then, well, look at that, no skills, we can't grow. That's bullshit to go about it that way. It's an impractical, self-destructive, idiotic way of going about things. And a lot of the claims of skill shortages that we see are in that category of absurdity and ridiculousness. But also, if you look at the government, in this case, the Australian government, but it happens all across the Western world, has various classifications for skills. And they seem to be very, very flexible whenever they're applying this to brown and black people. White people must be skilled, but brown and black people aren't required to be as skilled, even though they fall under the supposed category of skilled workers. This could be Indian computer programmers, for example. Now, I have front row seat, first-hand experience here. I think every single computer programmer I ever hired or interacted with from India could not program even a single line of code. The degrees they had in computer science were just socialite, prestige, bribed, corrupt degrees. They weren't degrees of achievement or accomplishment where they studied their asses off and got the PhD or anything. The quality of work that they do is very poor for the ones that were qualified or partially qualified. The standard they have to meet to achieve the qualification is well below what it is in the West. So what benefit it is in bringing in Indian programs or Pakistani programs, well, the subcontinent programmers, I would question. When work is sent offshore to Indian programming firms, again, the quality of work is so poor, the amount of it that has to be redone and done again and done, more after that is such that you just wouldn't do it. There's no economic benefit in it at all, given in the wider scheme of things, the time it takes to do and so on. Now, also, I've met a number of people who supposedly have come into Australia on skilled immigration visas. For example, there was a lady from some dirt poor failed state shithole in Africa, and her supposed skill was she could type at like 25 words a minute because she'd got some certificate from some college in this failed state basket case country, and she got in on a skilled work visa. I mean, you kidding me? I can type faster than that. So the bar is kept very low for people from third world countries. So again, it's really just an excuse to bring in a lot of people. Now, the organisations, whether it be public services or other groups that 10, 15 years ago were 100% white, now they're 50% non-white. And whenever I have to deal, or we as a business oversharing, whenever we have to deal with these people, we groan and roll our eyes because the quality of them is so low, assuming they even speak English well enough, which itself is a challenge. So that they're given these jobs, they're these created jobs that have nothing to do with skills or productivity or requirements. I mean, that they aren't needed. And jobs are subdivided again. They're given a little splinter of what was once a whole person's job. They've got their checklist to follow, but they've got no comprehension of what they're doing or what they need to do and how the work they do may be important to something else. And it's insane dealing with these people because they just behave like third world bureaucrats, low-level third world bureaucrats who have no idea what they're doing, can only repeat the same line over and over and refer back to the checklist. So these aren't skilled people at all. I haven't seen not a single brown or black person that's been imported into Australia, and I've met plenty, there's been put under a skilled work visa, supposedly skilled, not a single one that has a usable, desirable, needed skill, or if they do have the skill, is able to demonstrate it to me or to my colleagues. And as in the course of normal discussion, that's ridiculous. Or people I've met on even a semi-social basis. I mean, how the fuck did you get? There's a lady from brown lady from, or swarthy brown rather than brown lady from southeastern Europe who got in because she could do some sort of graphic design, and her own admission, she was stunned when she got here at how advanced the graphic design industry is in Australia and how low low capability it was where she came from, but she still got in on a skilled work visa because supposedly graphics people are needed. Well, that's bullshit, because any job for a graphic artist that's put out gets a gazillion applications from many of those people are very well qualified. So there's a vast surplus of these people. Yet we bring out another one from again a close, almost failed state, Southeast European country that's very poor and has a very low standard of education and so on. And yet we're bringing those people out. So the people that are being brought out are unskilled now, or allegedly skilled, but in reality unskilled. So this is, I just wanted to give the wider architecture of what's going on in this scam. There is no shortage of labour, none. There is no shortage of skilled labour, absolutely none. And this whole skilled work visa is a fucking scam to bring in more brown and black low-skilled peasant workers from the third world, and that's it. There is no net accomplishment at all to the Western world or the Western workforce or the Western society. And given the myopic nature of business, given they're driven by numbers, they're all controlled by the BlackRocks and everything now, given they're just driven like it's business straight by the numbers, do these 10 people have lower salaries than those 10 people? Output and so on doesn't matter. And the more the lower and lower skilled the workforce becomes, the more and more the big finance and big business wants monopolies and oligopolies and price cartels to compensate. We can't compete in the market because none of the people we've employed are worth a pinch of shit. So therefore, to offset this lack of capability we've inflicted upon ourselves, we now want to compensate for this by having price gouging cartels. So that's what's going on. And if there was a genuine shortage, then it should be made of skills. Then it should be made up by compensated for by more flexible education and rapid deployment education that I've been advocating for some time. You've been fantastic today, your pushback channel. Thank you for listening.